broadcast community. It is MJ Calloway here with another episode of Bounced Up Broadcast. And I am so excited today to have Peter Margaritis, ESP, and also known as the Accidental Accountant. Welcome, Peter.
Oh, MJ, I'm looking forward to this conversation. Thank you
Oh,
for inviting me.
absolutely. So before I get into what the heck is the accidental accountant, I have to thank you because you were interrupting your golf weekend with the guys to be with us today. So thank you so much. So audience, if somebody, one of his friends happened to pump in the background there, we're just going to go with it. So thank you so much. So, Peter, the accidental accountant, and you also have that's your website, you talk about it. So, and when I first heard it, I thought, oh my goodness, I get that because I feel like I'm the accidental sales professional, the accidental writer, the accidental speaker. So, how did that actually come about?
Well, I am a CPA, and apparently I can take an exam pretty well because I passed the CPA exam. But actually doing the detailed work of accounting, I was terrible at it. And when I left public accounting, I went to work at Victoria's Secret Catalog. I told you, not as a model, not as a model. And I was in the accounting and finance department, and my first performance review before I even sat down in the chair, my boss goes, "How in the heck did you ever become a CPA? A CPA can get down here. I can only get you this far. You're an accidental accountant." And I thanked her. That was the nicest thing she said to me all year. But what I told her is I said, when you want something done in this building, who do you ask to get it done? She goes, "Well, of course you, Pete, because your cheeks are never in the seat." I went, "That's not fair." I realize there's a stereotype about accountants. And we're in the information gathering business. So they're not going to give information to me freely if they say, "Oh God, here comes the accountant again. He's going to say no to everything," or whatever. But if they know me as Pete, the guy from accounting, they're more likely to share information with me because we have that relationship. And I explained this to her, and she had this look on her face like, I still don't get it. But so I've trademarked it. It's the name of my business. I love when people ask me that question, how did that come about? And it's really in a performance review.
Oh my goodness, that's so interesting. But I get it. And I'm sure everybody who was watching, they probably have had something like that too, where you are prejudged. I have been prejudged many times over the years because I'm considered perky. And perky people, as I've been told by a supervisor once, perky people, they don't do the details. So, but it isn't true,
Right.
yes. So you are very much into, and thank you so much for sharing that story with us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for asking.
Sure. So you also are an author. You have a new book out that's called Off Script, which I love the cover. I mean, it is just, it's so eye-catching. So off script also comes because of part of your business. So give us what motivated you to write that book. I know it's to help your audience, to help your clients and so forth, but what else motivated you?
Well, to be honest with you, Off Script, Mastering the Art of Business Improvisation was a book that was in my head. My first book I wrote was Improv is No Joke, using improvisation to create positive results in leadership and life. And a lot of people, loved it. I've been introduced it to organizations, but I kept hearing this a few times. Pete, loved the book. It needs more of a business twing to it. Pete, loved the book. Can you go deeper on the business angle? And when my brother-in-law, Clyde, goes, "Pete, love the book. Needs more business." I listened. So this was back in probably 2017, about 16, 17. So what I started doing was curating for this third book. And what I did is I searched the internet, business improv. I was finding articles in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes magazine, reputable publications about improv as a leadership tool, not just a comedic tool. And I've always believed that. I've been a student of improv for over 25 years. I've taken a number of improv workshops through Second City in Chicago, Cincinnati Improv, and I have a former Second City LA gentleman who is my improv coach that I'm on retainer now for about 3 years, and we meet monthly.
Okay.
So when the pandemic hit, I had to redo my business, and then August came around and said, well, I've done all my to-do list. Let's just go ahead and write this book. I got time on my hands. And this book was so much, the first 2 books were fun to write, but this one felt differently because things that I had uncovered. And the one thing that I've uncovered, and it's well documented, it's the best kept secret in American history, is that Martin Luther King improvised the I Have the Dream speech.
You're kidding. You're not kidding. Oh.
I'm not kidding. He improvised the speech. Now, I'm going to back up just for a second. People think that those who are improvisers just wing it, pull stuff out of the air, create stuff, when that's really not the truth. Improvisers over-prepare. And we over-prepare to the point that when we walk into a meeting, to a presentation or whatever, we take that script and throw it away. And we react to the audience. Now, Martin Luther King, the day before the speech in Washington in 1963, he and his team were together, and they were going through his script. And there was a piece 2/3 of the way about the I Have the Dream, because he'd been doing the I Have the Dream speech for about 6 to 7 to 8 months prior to. And they said, let's pull this. We've overdone it. Let's get rid of it. So Martin Luther, they all agreed, wrote a different ending to it. And actually, that speech was originally titled, Uncertainty Never Again. So when he's delivering, and you can, if you watch the video, you can see when this happens. He's up there delivering the speech, and he's got thousands of people in the audience, but he's not getting the response he expected. So about 2/3 of the way, he pauses for a moment. The gospel singer that day was a woman named Mahalia Jackson, who knew Dr. King very well and was on stage with him, said, tell me about your dream, Martin. Now, I can't find where he actually heard it documented, but it's documented that others heard her say that. And at that point in time, he looked down, pushed his speech aside, and went back into the I Have the Dream speech because it was so embedded into his DNA. But he went off script and brought that in, because if he would have stayed with the script, that speech wouldn't have had the same impact. It wouldn't have done. But and you can see through the speech, he's looking up and down, up and down. And at the point where he moves his speech aside, you can see that the passion, the energy, because he was reading the audience and knew that whatever he was saying wasn't connecting, knew that the I Have the Dream portion would connect with everyone. And he improvised the speech.
Oh my goodness, I never knew that. And I am sure a lot of people never knew that.
No.
I will go back and watch that to watch for those clues. How many times did you watch that speech in order to pick that up?
Well, actually, I read it first uncovered it in an article by Carmen Gallo, who does a lot of storytelling and writing. I used a lot of his writing in my research for my second book, Taking the Numb Out of Numbers. He wrote an article for Forbes magazine, and Martin Luther King improvised the speech, which caught my eye. I went, and just started digging. And one day I found the full 17 minutes. It was supposed to be 5, but he went 17, and just kind of watched it and kind of knew about where it was going to happen. But you see that he wasn't doing this. He was just speaking from his heart, his soul. There's more to that story. I don't want to take up time, but that's kind of the key pieces of it.
Okay, great. And you talk about that in your book? Is that
yes?
Okay, great. So, thank you, Jim. So those of you who want to learn more about it, you want to make sure you pick up Off Script. Now you mentioned Take the Numb Out of Numbers. And this isn't only about accountants. It really, when you come down to Take the Numb Out of Numbers, you're talking about communication.
Yes. And actually, everything I talk about, there's a communication slant to it. Now,
Yeah.
being a CPA, we speak a foreign language of business called accounting. Sales does not understand accounting lingo
No.
language. HR does not understand this. And actually, this is for the book is written primarily for the financial community, but it could be written for anything in the technical world. So a real quick story, I had some tests done a while back, and I get this phone call from my doctor, not the assistant, my doctor on a Friday afternoon. This can't be good. And she goes, Pete, I got some information for you. And she went into this tsunami of medical lingo that I had no idea what she was saying. And after a few seconds, I said, Doc, stop, please. Tell me in plain English what you're trying to tell me in medical language. She paused and said, you may have cancer. Now I know. What's the next steps in plain English? She laid it out for me. Knock on wood, I didn't. But that same scenario happens in business every single day when an accountant, an engineer, medical is speaking their language and not translating it into plain English. So when I wrote this book, my mind was with how do we as accountants get away from that? Well, first we need to understand our audience, who we're speaking to, because it's not about us, it's about our audience. Number two, we need to come up with some storytelling techniques. We need to tell the story because facts and figures don't drive decision making. Emotion drives decision making.
Sure does.
So I explained that, and I came up with a 6-step process that I call improv. Go figure.
I wonder why.
Wonder why. And then the last part is you can have the best story. You can understand the audience, but if you can't engage them, you're going to lose them. And I go into some PowerPoint theory as it relates to the brain and how we can make those PowerPoints less taxing on the audience's brain and more engaging.
So can you give us an example of a PowerPoint?
So if you would see one of my PowerPoints, well, I'll start this way. The right hemisphere of the brain controls the left side of the body. The left hemisphere of the brain controls the right side of the body. So through a book, the title of it is Brain Rules by John Medina, and a gentleman by the name of John Molidor, who is a doctor at Michigan State University, a doctor of education, doctor of psychology, I believe it. And remember, past president of the National Speakers Association came and talked to our chapter about this concept, about the brain and PowerPoint. Now, if you want to connect with the audience's brain, first you make the PowerPoint easy. You don't clutter with a lot of words, okay? But you do two things. You take up whatever the topic you're speaking on, whatever the slide speaks to, you find a picture that relates to it, and you put it on the left side of the slide to connect with the right hemisphere. You put the text. Now, you put a few words up there that you want to use as a mind jogger. Because you're prepared, we're prepared. I just need something to jog my memory. And by the way, if I have bullet points up there, you put one bullet point, you speak to that, and you click and you control what the audience sees. You don't put it all up there because they read faster than you speak.
Sure do.
and they're not listening to you. So you keep it simple, you keep it clean, and it just the more we clutter a slide, the more the audience, as I like to call it, the conference prayer. They grab their phone, they bow their heads, and we've lost them. We've lost them completely.
We have.
We have to find a way, but we are so tied. I'll tie this back to the book. We're so tied to what we want to say. We're too afraid to go off script and change it up to engage the audience. But that's the most important thing. The audience. It's not about us. But there's a lot of MJ, we know a lot of people in our association. It's all about them.
We do. We do. I was on a webinar that I had to watch in order to get a certification. It was the very last webinar yesterday. And the entire PowerPoint slide was all words. And I'm like, what is this person doing?
Right. What is this person doing?
So, and again, you're talking about communication when you're talking about PowerPoint. So improv is about communication. you're talking about whenever somebody in IT, because when you were talking about CPAs and engineers, and I've worked with engineers, I've worked with physicists, and once I dated a physicist, the different levels, I will say, but
Yeah.
it comes down to communication again. Now, one of the other things that you talk about is that improv and leadership go hand in hand. Can you dig a little bit more into that and how that goes hand in hand?
So when we think of improv, we think of comedy. We've seen Whose Line Is It Anyway? So we'll start with that as the backdrop. Now, there's a foundation in improv. Some people call it principles, tenets, foundation of respect, trust, and support.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have respect for your other on stage, the other actors, the other improvisers on stage. You should have respect for your team, your organization. They should have respect for you. When we don't have respect for the other side, the other person, you know what you call that? The US political system. Because it's my way, there's no compromise, there's no
Yeah.
respect, nothing gets done. So then we go to trust. You should be trustworthy and you should trust your team, okay, and trust what they do and not micromanage them to death. Or I'll stop it there. I could go like an hour just on that piece. And support. I'm up there to support the fellow actors. If somebody messes up and there's no mistakes are just happy accidents, I will follow that, but I won't throw that person under the bus. As a leader, I need to support my team. I need to provide them with the tools necessary for them to succeed, whether or not they stay with the organization or not. It should be that's my uncle, who's a former colonel in the Air Force, passed away recently, but I remember a conversation we had, and I was telling that accountants, why do we have to teach these people? All they're going to do is leave. And he said, that's the wrong thinking. You should teach them for the work that they're doing and for their community and to better the country, not just not invest in them. So if one of those pieces are missing, the foundation cracks, doesn't work. The superpower is listening and being present and focused. Listening to understand, not listening to interrupt or responding to something. It's parking your ego. It's setting the agenda aside. It's trying to filter out all the biases and unconscious biases that we have and truly active listen to what the person's trying to say without interrupting so we get an understanding. And all the while being focused on that conversation and not distracted so we can get a full understanding. And that person knows that we're listening to them. When we do those 5 things, we can adapt to anything. All the while, the glue to this are my 2 favorite words in the English language is yes and. Yes and's about agreement. Yes and's about empathy. Yes and's about providing appreciation to who you're speaking with. No and but stops conversations.
Oh,
Yes and keeps conversations moving forward. And before somebody says we can't say no at work, we can, but there's a nicer way to say no, even through yes and. But I will say there's a definite no, and throw whatever adjective in front of it that you want. No is when somebody's trying to push you across your ethical boundaries at work or in life. Then it's no. I mean, there are certain things that are just absolutely no. But for the most part, if we're trying to engage our people, in the off script book, there's a statistic that I validated that 78% of people leave their job not because of money, because of lack of appreciation. And the ability to listen to someone else and not judge them and accept that and provide this open-ended conversation, what might ultimately end up, we can't do it right now, but the person knows that you actually listen to them goes a long way in retention.
definitely. And when we're thinking about, and there's so much packed in there, so I have a few questions, but agree, and we're seeing that with this great resignation, with people not feeling appreciated and companies are not retaining employees. We see it. Okay, I need to go back. So you said respect, trust, and support. It's it's beyond it's leadership and so much more. I mean, think about it for those that are in sales, and
Yeah,
since
yeah.
I've been in sales for most of my life, I'm going to go that route. If we don't have respect, trust, and support for our potential buyers, for those people that we want to serve,
Mhm.
they'll find someone else.
Absolutely. I mean, improv leadership is servant leadership. Improv leadership is how can I serve you? What can I do? What do you need? How can I make your life easier or better? And this Great Resignation, one of the things that we saw was, and since this is well documented, I'll use it. Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan said, "I want everybody back into the office." That was his ego, and basically that cost him a lot of associates because why? I've been productive for 2 years at home, and it goes back to that trust.
Yes.
Versus there's a CPA firm in Boston who surveyed their people and said, when we get back past this, what do you want to do? Work from home, work in the office, or have a hybrid model? Well, they came up with a remote type of hybrid model. They reduced their footprint in the commercial real estate market, and everybody's happy. There's bumps and stuff in all of this, but for the most part, everybody's happy and they're still being productive. It's that authoritative leadership style that came out of the military through the and went from the 30s through, we still see it today.
Do.
It's
Mhm.
outdated. And I tell audiences, if you have that mindset and that open to new ideas, do not buy my book, or buy it and then give me a really bad review, whatever the case may be. But basically, you'll be making my argument for me.
Buy it and give it to somebody who would use it.
Yes,
The
yes.
So with that, I mean, it doesn't make sense to tell someone you have to be in with everything going on. But what I found, and I'm going back to this is pre-pandemic when I was in an office, I would stay after everybody else left because I had so many interruptions during the day that I wasn't productive. And what leaders forget about is all the talk, and I'm just going to use as a cliche, around the water cooler.
Right.
It's all those interruptions and stopping for lunch and getting, an extra coffee, and then you're chit-chatting along the way. You're much more productive at home
Mhm.
than you are in the office when you're surrounded with coworkers, especially when you're doing a lot of chit-chatting. So it does. So fortunately, statistics have shown and research have shown that that is true, that people are productive at home.
They are productive at home, but they became too productive at home. And I didn't write this in the book because it
Oh,
came to my attention after the fact. We also have to yes and us. We're yes anding our people. We're yes anding. We also need to yes and us and make sure that we're taking care of ourselves.
mm,
We were working, we'll just use 9 to 5. If I find myself that I'm working 9 to 8, not taking a lunch, powering through, no, there's something wrong with that model. We have to still take care of us. And by the way, this is the pot calling the kettle black. Yeah, but
yeah.
I found myself doing that, and then after the fact, it's like, no, I need to still take care of me. I need to do things that aren't just solely work based, because then we get all stressed out and burned
We
out.
Yes, we do. And I'm chuckling because somebody messaged me on LinkedIn to send them an email about a program I have. And 7:30 last night, I'm on my laptop emailing. So, yes, and.
Yes, and exactly. Yes, and me.
Okay, Peter, not everyone can just come up and do yes and. What is a way or a tip? What is something that you can suggest for someone to start practicing yes and?
Well, what I would say is when I discovered this 20 some odd years ago, I used to keep index cards. I would have it in my mirror, in my bathroom. I'd have it in my car. I would have it in at my office. I mean, I'm pretty good at this stuff, but I have this blue wristband that has yes and on it. I've said this in the past, and I am going to do this. I will get yes and on my forearm.
Oh,
I have no tattoos. Will be my first, but I'm that steeped into it. And basically, just listen to yourself. Are you saying no because? And if you have teenagers, you say this like, no, because I said so.
mm,
And,
sure.
and yeah, and my son once said, Dad, all you do is yell at me and say no. And I went, I do. Oh God, I do. And I found that I fell off the yes and wagon. I was saying no because and yes but and driving my
Mhm.
agenda. And then once I realized it, he it was about 2 months after that, and he goes, Dad, can I talk to you? I went, yeah, what's the matter? He says, you don't love me anymore. So what do you mean? He goes, well, you're not yelling at me. Okay, there's a punch in the gut.
Oh,
And I said, Stephen, you opened my eyes to something. And you remember those two words I told you that I like? Yeah, the yes and things. Yeah, that's right. Was I saying that when I was yelling at you? No, you were not. Have I been saying it since you brought it to my attention? Oh, okay. Yeah, I get it. You do love me.
oh my goodness, that is such a great story. And so true when it comes to parenting. It's an automatic, I call it reactive. We're reactive. We're
Right.
reacted to instead of being proactive. Okay, there's 2 or 3 things in there with it. So I'm gonna get a bounce up. I love that idea. I'm gonna get a bounce up here. Oh, that's great. So, okay. So that was one. So back when I had worked in an office
Uh-huh.
as a sales executive, I had a GM who said no frequently, and he
Mhm,
never, we were building custom homes, and I was always the one pushing the limit.
mhm,
And he would say, no, we can't do it. No, we can't do it. And I'd say, give me an alternative. I can't go back and say no. So instead of saying no, I would say, here's what we can do. I'd eliminate no and go into
mhm,
here's what we can do.
mhm,
You said something earlier, though. You said yes, and
mhm.
is showing someone we hear them, we have empathy. And although I wasn't saying no, the yes, and would have enabled me to give them understanding, let them know I heard them, and give empathy for, no, I can't do this for you by saying yes, and. So that's huge by doing that yes and.
It is. It is. But we can also use the yes and philosophy, and you use the yes and philosophy. Okay. We don't always have
Okay.
to say yes and, but we have to say we acknowledge I hear you, and you said give me another alternative or whatever, right? So
Right.
that's it's like, and we hear it all the time. We can't do that. No, we can't do that. My question is yes, I hear that we can do it, but my question to you is why? Why can't we do it? The customer, this is what the customer wants, and we're in the business of serving our customer. Why can't we do this? Because a lot of times the word no comes from fear of change
Yes.
and also protecting our territory at work.
Mm.
So this is the way we've always done it. My skin turns into duh. Yeah. It's like, why can't we do it? Well, we tried it. Well, we tried it when? Back in 2010. That's 10 years later. We've got cars that drive by themselves. We got iPhones that are stronger than microprocessors back in the 70s. Technology has changed. Why can't we?
And one of, oh my goodness, I know I drove my GM crazy. One of the things I would say to him frequently was, think about this before you
Mhm.
answer me. Just think about this.
Right.
And so it would at least get him to focus on whatever suggestion I had. So, finding ways to get around it. Peter, there is so much packed into this 30-minute segment here. And everything we talked about comes down to communication.
Absolutely.
really
Absolutely.
comes down to communication. And whether you are a leader in title, you are always a leader in whatever position you are in. And communication is a big part of it.
Yes, and there's a difference between leadership and authority. You're put in a role of VP or whatever. You have the authority to do things. You have the authority to fire people, but that doesn't make you a good leader. Just that authority level. Simon Sinek said it best. He said, leadership has nothing to do with your title. Leadership is the positive effect you have on another person.
Ooh.
That's leadership. And I took it wholeheartedly. I was flying back through Reagan National. I had walked into the men's room like 9 o'clock at night, hustle and bustle, but it was spotless. And I saw the restroom attendant over there working, and he looked tired. He looked like he had a hard day, and
Oh.
people would just bypass him. So I just kind of came up next to him and went, "Hey." He looked at me and said, "I just want to say thank you. I mean, this place is spotless. I've been in a lot of men's restaurants, in the travels. You just want to say thank you for a great job." He arched his back up, straightened up. He said, "No, thank you. Nobody talks to me. Nobody's ever said thank you. My boss never says thank you. You made my day,
Oh.
my week, my year." And I went, Simon's right. The simple
Mhm.
act of positive, not negative,
Yes.
positive. That's leadership.
It is. And Peter, I have to say, I do the same thing anytime I see someone cleaning a
Mhm.
restroom, because especially in airports,
Yeah.
that's a never ending job. And yeah, a thankless. But I'm thankful to have those towels when I'm in there. So,
Yes.
yes. So, audience out there, be sure to thank those people that are cleaning those restrooms because they do a good job. We need to thank them. Okay, Peter, we're coming to the end of our time. Do you have a last tip or something you want to say to our audience before we go into close here?
Listen to yourself. Listen to how you are speaking to others. Listen to your
Mm.
tone. Listen to, are you saying no because and given a reason, or yes but and given a reason? Also, listen to others who interact with you and start thinking, well, could I have used yes and here? And how would that change the conversation? How would that potentially take out the emotion that a lot of no and but conversations have? And just make it more on your radar how you're using words, how they affect others. Can you put a more positive spin on it and engage and excite your people? And by the way, we're
Mm,
human. We all make mistakes.
we do.
And if we think about mistakes with the acronym of FAIL, which stands for first attempt in learning, because we don't learn until we fail. We all make mistakes. Accept the mistake. Don't go crazy on them. Have them figure out a solution and just say, just don't do that again, please. Goes a long way.
Thank you so much. That was a perfect way to end our segment here, our broadcast. Peter, what is the best way for someone to get a hold of you?
My website is petermargaritis.com, and the last name is spelled Margaritis. It's pronounced like we pronounce it like a cocktail, but it's actually spelled like an inflammation, Margaritis. And my email is peter@petermargaritis.com.
All right.
And
Thank
I'm
you
on
so
LinkedIn and also all the other social media pieces out there.
LinkedIn, Facebook. Are you on Instagram?
I'm on
Yes,
Instagram
you
and
are
on
on
Twitter.
Instagram. I
Yes.
know that. So be sure to connect with Peter on all the social media platforms. If you haven't connected with me, MJ Calloway, be sure to do so. Like, make comments on this segment. Be sure to share it with your friends. And we will see you next Thursday. Until then, remember to make it a bounce up day. And I got to get down to the ending here, which I forgot to do. So thanks for watching.